there's a handhold and there's a foothold. There's another handhold and there's another foothold, and that's all you get.
You were leading?
No. But if you're leading, you might go all the way.
All the way?
Yeah.
Not all the way.
Yeah, like all the way. Crashed, ground out, and crater.
Sounds like might be a nice climb to do.
Crash, ground out, and crater.
I'm talking about all the way. You seem to got it today, Earl.
Feel good today. Today's the day. It's an old 10. Okay. A couple of 9s. A couple of 8s. Okay.
That's
Let's
3
start with
9s.
that right there.
You got 3 9s there.
Is this a 9 too?
Uh-huh.
Throw that away. Take the red and the blue 9. You don't think you're gonna need this? You got 2 9s right here, Ed. I know, but if that's the crack is the whole, that's the crack is just one size. Okay, why don't we do this? It sounds like you guys are going to want to take a lot bigger rack if it's your lead. So why don't I get my rack together, and you can supplement it with stuff that you'll take if it turns out to be your pitch.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, if I do it, I'd like to have a bunch of nuts.
Okay, well, let me get
I'm gonna stop
just
to put 'em in.
an ordinary rack going here first.
Just the rack and the pack on your back. 2 rows.
No packs.
I'm gonna pack the base. Nice dump it.
2 bolts.
Oh, you guys don't have any pins, huh?
Well, yeah, we do, and we have a bag.
I'd rather have pins than these bolts.
Those bolts work really well, though.
Those big ones.
I put one in yesterday, and it's really held really well. Didn't seem like it would, but it did.
Super solid.
Will this pin go in?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll just take these here. Let's re-rack that so we can get them off instantaneously.
Oh. Did you get it?
Needle.
Want me to try to get it, Earl? Pretty fucking heavy. You look pretty shaky.
You look pretty shaky, man.
I always wondered whether I was going to have another comeback phase of my life. You know, I've already had one comeback phase right after I got frostbitten, where after about 2 years of physical therapy, and I had 7 operations on my fingers and toes. I lost 3 toes as well on my left foot. You know, I already had one comeback when I got really heavy back into climbing. More devoted, more fanatical in some ways than even when I was in my early 20s. I was completely driven. To climb. After my frostbite, I went on 5 more Himalayan expeditions. I mean, Stuart had, you know, he's busted his leg. Bryan had broken his collarbone. You know, and I frostbit my hands and my toes. And all of those injuries, I mean, happened since Supercrack. But yeah, we've all had our, you know, injuries here and there and gotten kind of knocked around by other climbing adventures that we've had, you know, in the past 30 years since we climbed Supercrack.
What am I? Better. I think I came out here first with James and Dennis. I was still in high school. I was, I think I was 17 years old. I was still 17, still climbing. But they drug me out here. We drove out here in a red Volkswagen. which is a little red rocket, which belonged to Dennis, right? And we were like hanging out, scraping the windshield. It's like November. Stop at the Black Canyon, look in. And it's like, I think it's the first time I'd seen the black. And it's like, try to get the scale of it and just look at the features on the walls over there and, you know, like big flakes laying against the walls. And you think about, what is that structurally? And wouldn't it be cool to be over there?
Well, it was my first climbing trip to the desert when we climbed Supercrack. You know, I'd never seen it before. I had just heard about it from Jimmy Dunn. He said to me, imagine a telephone pole 300 feet high, and imagine that you lean that telephone pole up against a vertical reddish-brown sandstone wall, and then you make the telephone pole about, you know, hand width, and that's a crack, just going straight up this featureless blank wall for 300 feet, and totally parallel-sided the whole way. That's what we want to go do.
So we parked the car at the cattle guard, hiked up the slope, and said, wow, this is the Supercrack. This is the most amazing crack we've ever seen. But of course, at that time, 1971, we couldn't climb it. We didn't have the gear. We had a set of Colorado nuts, which had just come out, and pitons, and you can't protect a parallel-sided crack with either one of those very well. So we kind of had shelved it to a future date to try to come back and maybe climb the thing. And that date came in 1976 when Jim Dunn was going to go down with Earl Wiggins to climb the Supercrack.
Supercrack is what started everything, because it was on my very first trip to the desert that we climbed the route. I'd never seen it before. I'd only heard about it from Jim and from Earl. And so when we came around the corner and finally looked at it, it was, you know, one of those religious moments. When we came here in the first week of November in 1976, none of these cracks had really ever been climbed. There were a couple of climbs that had been done here in the fringe of Death Canyon, where we are right now. But essentially, in the main part of the canyon, there was not a single crack that had been climbed. It was a psychological jump through this barrier. Could a crack like that even be climbed safely and protected by hexcentrics? No one knew that. Is this really possible? Can somebody really do a crack like this? We didn't know. The only way we were going to find out was to try.
Is this an 8?
Uh-huh.
I'd take one of these big nuts to protect getting into the slot.
I wouldn't take one that doesn't cam. Take the
This
new
must
one,
be a
not
10
an old
here,
one.
huh, James?
Which one?
This?
That's Bryan's. Take it.
Here's,
That's a 10.
Okay.
That's an 11.
Yeah.
I'd bring some small rack for the second pitch.
You know, it's the unknown, of course, and the stuff that we had, well, we didn't know if it would work in the crack itself. When leading with hexes, you had to really look ahead and look for those constrictions in the crack where you could fit them in. And in Indian Creek, out here, those constrictions are a lot more subtle. So, you know, back in those days, we weren't sure we could protect those things as well.
It was like climbing with a rack of cowbells, you know.
It's like nothing you knew we could use, though. You had it, but we weren't sure anything would go in. Was the big, can we place anything? Can you place anything? I was on the ground.
It was a question mark. Would the hexes, would they jam because the crack was so incredibly parallel-sided?
Could you find a narrowing?
And then the other question was, well, if he fell, was the hex going to keep him from hitting the ground?
And that's the attitude. There's a real tension about getting any pro in at all. And he, had that attitude. We still had an upward attitude. Going for it, right? The whole thing about going for it.
And as far as, you know, the protection, that was the big thing down there. But I figured if Earl could third class some of the climbs that he'd climbed, he could, you know, he'd just end up third class in that thing, if nothing else.
You know, Earl was like Jim, he was a very motivated climber. He was also very temperamental, but you went climbing with Earl Wiggins or Jim Dunn, you knew you were going to get up a route.
Well, Jimmy told me the original plan was he and Earl were going to climb it. And that didn't transpire, and it looked to Jim like there was kind of it wasn't going as he had planned it. So I think that's probably one reason he bailed on that climb. And it wasn't Jimmy's style at all. I could see that pretty clearly down there, that he wasn't. I wasn't surprised a bit that he bailed on it, because it was a scene. It took on a life of its own, and it was not Jimmy's style.
Jim in some ways he's a shy person, and he doesn't like being in, a big crowd of people. He's never been a person to draw attention to his own climbs. He's a kind of mysterious figure, I suppose, in the climbing world, because he doesn't blow his own horn. He just goes climbing. Do you remember that Jim and Earl were going to lead? One of them was going to lead Supercrack.
Yes,
and then you and I were going to just sort of
hang out,
like watch, or just
maybe get a top rope,
or maybe get
sharp,
a top
rope.
rope
On top ropes,
Maybe they would throw us a rope and we would follow.
I'm still working on that theory,
Is that
That's what I do out here, man. I wander around and think, give me a top rope. Yeah.
But so what happened?
It's got Hex mentality,
But we never really talked about it after Jim decided not to do the climb.
No, it just kind of happened. That was belaying, I think.
It just kind of, you were belaying. Yeah,
I think I did some belay slave time.
No, you belayed.
Yeah.
But I mean, we never talked with Earl about,
Yeah.
oh, okay, I guess now the three of us are going to do it. It was just
It happened
sort
kind
of
of fast.
assumed. It was just kind of like, oh, okay, well,
You guys are up
Jim's not going
on
to
deck.
climb, and Stuart is making the film, and
Yeah.
the other guys are helping with the filming. So,
It's
of
true.
the original movie. So, okay, so I guess that means Bryan, I guess you and I are climbing with Earl.
My God, no.
Jimmy's always called his own deal on climbing, and he's always lived with his consequences, whether he, makes it up something or doesn't, or climbs something or doesn't. It's always his own decision. So I think he was okay with it. That day, I saw some frustration in him a little bit. I spent all day with Jim, and he never said, boy, do I wish I was out there climbing. But I don't know how you could not want to go out there and climb. It was such a fun, exciting thing. It was just the air was charged with adventure that day, and I'm sure he felt some misgivings, I would think, but I can't speak for him for sure.
The other thing I remember about talking about before we came down here to the desert to do the climb, was Jim and Earl sitting around, and each of them saying to each other, this is a climb worth dying to do, worth dying for. Like, if we get killed trying this, it's okay, because it's such an incredible climb. But Earl and Jim, they were willing to take that chance. Bryan and I think were more along for the ride to just kind of, okay, like we're supporting, we're supporting you, but I don't know if one of us was going to lead the first pitch that day.
Well, I sure as hell wouldn't.
I'll stick on with Venus. How's that?
We gonna flip at the base for the climb?
You can try it first if you want.
Oh, well, okay. I'm just
Fall
gonna
off.
get my rack. Ready?
I remember it was like three gunfighters walking to the OK Corral. That it was like, okay, we're walking down the road and we're joshing each other, but it was kind of like we were walking to something really serious, but we were trying to keep a playful attitude and limber up and, chill out a bit, but it was really serious as well.
I mean, Earl put on a very nice shirt, thinking, well, we talked about it a little bit, and so, yeah, well, might as well put on a nice shirt today, Could be my last day.
When it came time to climb the Supercrack, I didn't have much fear of failure that Earl couldn't climb that baby. I was pretty sure that he could do it. The belays were going to be problematic, whether they could protect those belays, whether they could get off if they couldn't do the second pitch, or there was some problems with it. The outcome was not known. It was not given, that was for sure, and it was a great adventure for those guys and for all of us watching. But as far as Earl being able to jam that first pitch, we knew what was going to happen when he went up that big thing.
and he didn't hesitate. He just kept going. He just kept climbing higher and higher and higher.
He was ready to.
And our eyes are getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Ready to perish
because we're
that day.
watching him going, oh my God, he needs to get something else in. Put another piece in, you know, and he didn't. He just would keep. He was climbing so fast and so fluidly with such beautiful, you know, technique and precision. It almost looked like, he'd never done it before. I mean, this was on site. This was brand new. And it was just incredible to watch him power up the crack in just less than 10 minutes. When Earl got up towards the top of the pitch, you know, none of us were breathing. I mean, Earl was breathing, but none of us were breathing. We were just, you know, waiting and waiting and waiting. And then he threw his shoulder into the niche, into the belay niche. And it was just exhilaration, jubilation, people shouting, whoa, whoa. He certainly ran it out in between each hex that he placed. I mean, he put in 3 hexes above the roof, and he totally ran it out. He was going for it.
Yeah.
I mean, running it out 20 feet above a hex in a completely parallel-sided crack.
It's great
I mean,
if you know you're going to get probed, but you didn't know.
Yeah, but that's just wild.
know if
That's a
you're gonna
wild
get it
thing
or
to
not.
do.
Yes.
I mean, it was
It's
really,
bold.
it was out there. I'd never seen anything like it. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it on a climb since. Because it was such a big leap forward and into the unknown. This is the original Supercrack t-shirt. There it is. It's been in my closets, a lot of different closets in the last 30 years. But there it is, a Scottish Lion t-shirt. It's got a couple of holes in it, but you know, it should be okay. I don't climb hardly at all anymore. You know, I've done about 6 days of climbing maybe in the last 12 years. So I was very nervous at the beginning. You know, it's when you're at the ledge at the bottom of the climb and you're looking up, I mean, it's really, really steep. So it's pretty intimidating when you're standing at the bottom of the climb. It was important to me to honor the spirit of our first ascent. And I felt it was really important that one of us who was on the first ascent party lead the climb.
Oh, fuck. Come down. It's all right, let me just...
Jesus. That's the problem. You know, that's what I was worried about, was that I would just blow out on this first part. You know? And I don't know, I'm not really sure if we would have gotten up the climb or not if it hadn't been for Earl. I mean, I think Earl had boldness and vision.
And a nice shirt.
and he was so jazzed and so psyched up to do it.
Supercrack rarely gets climbed to the top anymore, but that was one of the reasons that Supercrack was picked out as a super climb and a Supercrack, because it went to the summit. And in those days, that was a value.
That was a strong ethic to get to the top. That a climb wasn't finished, it hadn't been completed. Maybe it couldn't even be named, and it wasn't a full climb until it got to the summit, to the rim. People now would just say it's a totally antiquated ethic, almost like a mountaineering ethic, that you have to get to the top. And in the case of climbing in the desert, you either got to the top of the pinnacle or you got to the rim of Indian Creek, of the canyon. And when we finished the climb, later that day, when we finally wrapped back down from the rim, we were jubilant because we knew we had done this, one of the most dangerous climbs of our lives. And also, we never thought the climb would be done again. And how ironic is that? We never thought Supercrack would ever be repeated because it was so dangerous. And it probably would rarely have ever been repeated except for the invention of spring-loaded camming gear. And that changed the whole equation. And so when Friends were invented and Camelots later, in the late 70s, early 80s, they overnight completely revolutionized sandstone crack climbing.
But that's what opened it up for me. You could finally come down here and
not die.
And not kill yourself by climbing these things. I mean, because we weren't all as good as Earl and Ed and Bryan. You had to, sometimes you fell, and you didn't know if you're going to fall on a
What do you think about
number one hex, if it was going to hold or not, you know.
It
But Friends, they held pretty good.
Oh, Jesus.
I think I'm gonna have to let you go up, Bryan, and get the rope up there.
Good try. It's so rounded.
I was hoping that I could channel some of that energy of maybe of the day that we did the first ascent and try to just recapture that incredible feeling of being below such a beautiful climb and, you know, rising to the occasion and feeling that I was somewhat invincible and that I could go back in time and feel that strength and confidence of that I had when I was in my early 20s.
Like I said, I've only climbed this first part once, I think. Maybe, I don't know, maybe once or twice, but I always remember it was really awkward and, you know, it's a very, very awkward start. When we did the first ascent, we started from the ledge. Yeah, you were up there, right? Up above, so we went through the chimney. Man. Whew.
Take the bus or take the train. The space between is still the same. Run away or stay with me. A peaceful soul is on his knees. Can an angel hear a teardrop fall? Jesus, Jesus, save them all. 'Cause nobody seems to know the way we're not supposed to go. And there are things that I cannot see or understand for the life of me. And though the world can't see the forest for the trees, I know one day you'll let us hold the light. When the world is old enough. And there are things that I cannot see or understand for the life of me. Though the world can't see the forest for the trees, I know one day you'll let us hold the light. I know one day you'll let us hold the light. When the world is old enough.
I couldn't really believe that I was leading it, to be honest. I mean, I felt like I was in a dreamlike state that in a way I felt like it wasn't really me who was doing the climb, that it was almost like I was someone else doing the climb, or maybe I don't know, like I said, I was trying to pretend I was a younger version of myself, drawing on that confidence of all the crack climbs that I've done down here.
I thought a windsor would blow me over. I thought the answer was further back, but I got stronger. This life is longer than miss my mother, the boys are my brothers. I miss the tailwind that sends me home. I got friends on both sides of the border, but we lost a few now as we got older. And now the grass is lying on the tracks, and tall, tall trees are growing through the cracks. So I can never go back.
It was surreal being up there, and but I've done the climb before, and I knew that if I kept powering up, that eventually I would hopefully make it.
It's barely burning. I can tell she's trying to stay awake now, to hold the day in line. This body's broken, it's got no more fight. And now the grass is lying on the tracks. The tall, tall trees are growing through the cracks. Oh, how the grass is lying on the tracks. The tall, tall trees are growing through the cracks. So I can never go back.
Earl! That's for you! That's for you, Earl! Woo! That's the first 510 I've led in 12 years. Ah. Oh.
We could have had someone else lead the climb. I could have top roped it, but I felt like that would have been a stepping down from the spirit of when we first did the route. You know, I brought my lucky t-shirt along. God knows why I kept that t-shirt all these years, but evidently this was the occasion. I did sort of step back in time to an earlier age in my life when I had the incredible drive that you feel when you're in your 20s. And I really wanted to do that lead for Earl and to celebrate his life and his many climbing accomplishments, and what a great guy he was as well. What a fantastic partner Earl was. I wanted to honor all of my partners that I was down here with 30 years ago. We miss him. You know, we miss him. We wish he was here. He was one of our very best climbing partners that we ever roped up with. He was an inspiration to all of us of my generation. And when I heard that he had killed himself, it was a complete and utter surprise for me. I mean, I was totally shocked when I heard the news. And obviously it was very, very sad for those of us that were his friends and his climbing partners. And it's taken, I mean, I don't know if any of us have really ever figured out why he felt so distressed.
It's a total surprise to me, or was to me, still is. And, I mean, I don't know, you know. Sometimes we just don't know why people do it. Maybe Earl was supposed to have been depressed. Well, okay, that's kind of like saying somebody's got dyslexia or something. I don't know. It doesn't explain anything, you know. But anyway, he did. And the world's not a better place for it at all. Now.
Earl always seemed to be supremely confident. Maybe he had some, I don't know, the same sort of problems that we all have with relationships or work or jobs that are difficult, that don't quite pan out the way you might hope. But in the end, Earl was working running his own rigging company for Hollywood films, and he seemed to be very successful doing it. He worked on 3 or 4 big Hollywood films. But obviously there were other aspects of Earl's life, of his personality or his family life that were bringing him down. But I didn't have any clue about those other chapters or other parts of his life. I always knew Earl as being just a wonderful person to be with and climb with.
I think Earl went through a lot of life changes doing that thing because it was such a different job that demanded a lot from him and everybody, and there was a lot of pressure in it. And I lost track of Earl during that time. He was gone, of course, and we'd follow reports and see his name in the credits and whatnot. But and we knew he was very successful and he was doing a good job, and that's the way it seemed to me. In talking to people later on that worked with him, it seemed like he had, the problems of any businessman, I guess, going through a new high-pressure job and learning and dealing with a lot of people and dealing with a lot of pressure.
I remember bouldering with him at, I think I met him at Graduation Rock, Cheyenne Canyon. We ended up going to Ute Pass and, God, I don't know, Turkey Rock Garden, Earl loved to sandbag me, man. I'd come back from being in the East, doing winter and doing ice climbing a lot, and a little bit fatter. Hey, got a new climb in the garden, Bryan. Come check it out. Yeah. Hey, here's lead it. Yeah, it goes this way. Oh, that's great, Earl. Yeah. I think it was like pipe dreams or something, Be leading up, going, God, how hard is this, Earl? Oh, it's 5'9". Plus. What do you mean plus? Plus, I think I ended up putting in a piece or two and coming back down. What do you mean plus? how plus? Always playing. He was, Earl was fun in a lot of ways. Serious in some ways and then fun at other times. Oh well. Had a good time while I was here. His glasses were that thick. He had Coke bottle lenses for glasses. I was surprised you could see stuff. It was really funny because Earl, we're the same age basically. I'm actually was a week and a half older than Earl, right? Same age. And he had gone to Yosemite, dropped out of school, and had a lot of experience climbing. And we got to climb together. I learned a lot from him,
He had just incredible motivation, and that was part of the success of any good climber, is having the motivation as well as the skills to be able to do it. And Earl had both.
Earl's crack technique was always impeccable. So I don't know if Supercrack really boosted his own crack climbing up to another level, but maybe it allowed him to do some of these amazing free solo ascents that he did. And he did these amazing free solo ascents in the Black Canyon, particularly of the Scenic Cruise, in an hour and a half. It's 1,800 feet high, free solo. No rope, just a pair of shoes, and I'm not even sure he had a chalk bag, to be honest.
Well, yeah, some of the third classing he was doing earlier on, for a lot of us were third class at all. It's like, oh, okay, whole different thing. That's, you can explore your soul, let's say, third classing, about why you're climbing at all, and take it very seriously.
I don't think Earl thought it was a big deal for himself. Earl was pretty low-key about the climbing thing. I mean, He was not self-aggrandizing with any of his climbing. He never talked up any of his climbs. He didn't really try overtly to become famous. I think he tried to become singular and to add something to climbing and to bring a new dimension to it or a new face to it. And he was totally involved in it. But Supercrack was just another step along the way. I don't think he thought it was a big thing.
Years later, Earl wrote a wonderful book with his girlfriend Katie called Canyon Country Climbs. And Earl, when the book finally was published, Earl gave me a copy of the book, and he said to me very specifically, now here's the book, but you'll notice there's one climb that's not in this book. I'm like, oh yeah, what's that? Supercrack, luxury liner. It's not in here. There's not a single photograph of Supercrack in the book. And I remember Earl saying to me after the book came out, yeah, you'll notice that there's one climb missing from this book. And I'm not really sure why he felt so strongly about it. Partly maybe it was because nobody used his name for the route, which was
Luxury liner.
He named it luxury liner, and that name just didn't stick. It was already, people knew it as the Supercrack of the desert. And maybe he was kind of bummed that his name never stuck. But it was Earl's vision and his boldness that made the climb possible. But maybe he had a hard time with dealing with that somehow. I'm not really sure why. It's kind of a mystery to me.
You know, there weren't a lot of people around out there climbing in those days. If you saw anybody out there, you probably knew them. I mean, a lot of it, when we were out there, it was just going around and looking at things and trying to pick the most reasonable things we could find to climb. Again, because, you know, mostly what we had were hexes, and, you know, you didn't want to, well, basically die out there. Supercrack, a luxury liner, take your pick, opened up the fact that, you know, this is just crack climb itself, and the cragging's a lot of fun. In fact, I really, you know, worked on my crack climbing after that quite a bit. But there's a certain purity of climbing cracks, a certain thing that's just a neat study in itself, a neat art form, if you will, part of climbing. And I think it really set me on to, you know, learning more about it and just trying to get a lot better at it.
You know, Supercrack is kind of like the climbing wall. You know, it's like the gymnasium. It's where everybody congregates. Supercrack's been climbed 100,000 times now. God knows how many times it's been climbed. It's pretty rounded edge now. But you know, it's nice in some ways. I mean, it's to see that people are repeating the climb that we did. I mean, that's kind of fun.
Yeah, it's different now. It's a much more social thing. And in a way, it's good because, you know, it's a sharing thing. People have developed stuff out there that's just incredible. They're wonderful climbs, wonderful to do, wonderful to get top ropes on as well these days. But it's just a fantastic place to spend time. And it's nice to have that, you know, real physical, wild aspect of climbing to do. It's such a great, beautiful place.
Way to go, Ed.
That was for you too, Bryan.
Yeah, thanks, man. I need a little bit of that.
I had to give it a try.
Yeah, you did good. You did great. That was
Not
so
bad
nice.
for an old guy.
For an old geezer.
Oh my God.
All right.
I've been thinking about that for months.
Yeah.
I mean, for months and months.
Have you?
Yeah, ever since we decided to come back out here, I was like, I gotta try it. I've gotta just try it. I don't care what kind of style it is. I just want to really try it and just give it my best and see if I can do it. That was great.
Okay. You need some anything?
Oh yeah, I could use sitting
Right
down.
there's a good idea.
And who would have thought the Supercrack shirt would have actually had another trip up the climb? You know, I mean, really. This is a 33-year-old t-shirt, my God. I think it's ready for the museum though now, don't you? Maybe I'm ready for a museum at this point. That was like a dream up there. Oh, I put a lot of pro in, but I mean, geez.
Don't pay no mind to me. Just keep on painting the stars in the sky.
Oh man.
'Cause I know that one night I'll find you up in those same stars. I know that I may see all the glories I've read, that I may know all the beauty I've heard of. 'Cause I know that somewhere and somehow I have the slightest of you. And no other life I know brings rest to my soul. And no other song is calling me to join with the chorus and sing, that we may know all the glories I've read, that we may see all the beauty I've heard of. 'Cause I know that somewhere and somehow I will have the slightest